Hi, this is Michael Buffer, and welcome to the BoxHard Podcast.
Hello, everyone. This is Mikey Garcia.
This the monster from the swamps, Regis Rougarou Program.
Hey, what's up? This is King Carlos Molina, former IBF World Champ.
This is Michael, the Bounty Hunter, 2012 Olympian and your people's champ.
This is Charlie Edwards, flyweight champion of the world.
This is Fast Eddie Chambers, and you're listening to the BoxHard Podcast with my main man, Joey Coastman.
Hello everybody and welcome to episode 250 of the BoxHard Podcast. I'm your host Joey Coastman. I suppose in some ways 250 is a bit of a milestone, and what better way to celebrate that milestone with my main man, the last voice you hear on the intro every single week. It is of course the former heavyweight world title challenger. He's fast, he's Eddie, he's Chambers.
I like that. Yeah. What's going on, Joe? Everything good?
Everything is good. For those that don't know, we recorded last week, and like I said, I had loads of technical issues. The echoing was a real problem, so we had to literally delete the whole thing, and I had to redo it just on my own, obviously. And I apologise once again for last week's interview with Montel Griffin. There was obviously some echo in there, but I've heard good feedback on that. People saying it wasn't too bad, so I'm pleased about that. Hopefully everything will go smoothly this week. Right, so as ever, let's get into the... Well, firstly, I'm going to just say that little impression I did there was an impression, not a great one, but an impression there of David Diamante, a guy who I went into the... George Groves and Jamie Cox World Boxing Super Series quarterfinals. I think it was in the Wembley Arena, and they let me in. They let me in pretty early. I don't think I was supposed to be let in there. There was no other media there, and I was there, and he was rehearsing before the main, before any of the fights, and he was on the microphone. David Diamante, cool guy, and I could hear him just repeatedly, George Groves, and of course Jamie Cox, how he always repeats the surname.
Just so funny, though. But it was good though. That's not too bad of an impression, Joe. Wasn't bad.
Yeah, I'll have to practice that. But anyways, let's get into the review and preview parts. Of course, let's start with the review part. We're going to start here at California at the Fantasy Springs. Over here, we have to mention the card that took place on Friday the 24th. A fight, obviously, between a lady called Sinisa Estrada, who's now 19-0. It was a defense of her WBC silver female light flyweight title. Now, it became the fastest knockout in women's boxing history. It was over in 7 seconds of the first round. Her opponent, Miranda Adkins, I think she was about 41 years of age. I think she was a mother or whatever, and it's quite sad because before the fight they said I think she was fighting for her own mother and breast cancer, I believe it was. So she wanted to try and make a mark, but like I say, it was over in 7 seconds. She was a late replacement. A lot of people were saying that the matchmaking's horrible, and it was dreadful, some of the comments I've read. But, this lady, even though she didn't even land a shot, she was 5-0 with 5 KOs herself. Yes, I think 3 or 4 of those 5 were debutants, but even still, I don't know. I'm not going to go in too hard on that, but a win there for Estrada. Didn't learn anything, of course, from it. But moving up the card, Shane Mosley Jr. got a win unanimously over 8 rounds against Jeremy Ramos. Shane Mosley Jr. now 16-3. But the main event, Virgil Ortiz Jr. 15-0 with 15 KOs. He moved to 16-0 with 16 KOs. However, he did go longer than he'd ever gone before. I think he hadn't ever been past, I think it was 6 rounds, I believe it was, and he got taken further. This time out, obviously, against Samuel Vargas. He went to round 7 for the first time. Samuel Vargas, such a tough guy. Took so many big shots. Obviously, very experienced Vargas. And I was pleased that he at least took the guy into the 7th round, into uncharted territory. I like Vargas a lot, but he just had no answer, really, for Virgil Ortiz. He's so heavy-handed. You know, what a talent he is. And all knockouts once again. He keeps that 100% KO streak intact, the percentage intact, and just a brilliant win. You know, he is, for me, certainly going to be one of the best, fighters in the next few years. When he really gets on top, I think he's going to be a real problem. You know, he could potentially go down as a great fighter of this era. But yeah, credit to Sam Vargas. He certainly earned his money. And Ortiz, like a machine almost. Moving on from that, we're going to now go to a card that took place in the hotel, somewhere in a hotel in Michoacan, Mexico. Former IBF junior middleweight world champion Carlos Molina promoted his own show, and he boxed in the main event. His record now 33-11 with 2 draws. A win on points against Abraham Juarez, who is now 16-6. Juarez had been knocked out in 4 of his 5 losses going into the fight. I think Carlos Molina probably expected to stop him, but actually a very, very, very hard, tough fight for Carlos. The commentator said it could go either way. I wasn't really strictly scoring it. It wasn't a fight filled of, great action at times. It was quite a slow kind of fight. But Juarez was tall, awkward, and very, very tough. So not an easy night's work there for Carlos Molina. He's quite disappointed with his performance. Moving on, though, now to the BT Sports Studio in Stratford, London, United Kingdom. Let's talk about really just the main event. That was the only thing that did anything for me, to be honest. Joe Joyce now 11-0 with 10 KOs, a TKO in 3 rounds against Michael Wallish, who's now 20-4. Wallish was down once in the 2nd round and twice in the 3rd round prior to the stoppage. He just didn't really fancy it, to be completely honest with you. Wallish took a knee when he was down in the 2nd round, and he took a knee twice in that 3rd round, and referee Ian John Lewis waved it off, and rightly so. He just didn't really fancy it, to be honest. Took a few shots and just didn't want it. He did land some decent shots on Joe Joyce before it all went wrong for him. But yeah, and again, that's Joyce's fight out the way now. Dubois has his fight, I think, in August, and that'll be, if he gets through his opponent, that'll be a good fight between him and Joyce. At first, I really thought I had Joyce winning against Dubois. That was my very unpopular opinion on that upcoming fight, but I don't know, man. Joyce is very, very stiff and quite robotic, and a little bit slow, dare I say, at times. So I'm not quite sure about that one now. Just didn't really impress me too much, really. Anyway, it's going to be a totally different fight, of course, than what we saw the other night. I will mention on the undercard a win for Chris Bourke. He's now 8-0, a win there against the previously undefeated 11-0 Ramez Mahmoud. So good win there. Also a good win for Louis Lin. He's now 7-0. He was able to knock out in 2 rounds Monty Ogilvy. Other than that, that's that. Moving out now to Belarus, just one fight to mention over here at the Diamond in Minsk. Heavyweight Alexander Ustinov, he had his 40th fight. He's now 36-4. His opponent, Tornik Puric Amiashvili. He retired on his stall after 2 rounds, citing an injury. Strangely enough, he apparently won one of those first 2 rounds, but retired on his stall with an injury. Not quite sure what the injury was, but 2 judges had it 1 round apiece, and the other judge had Ustinov winning both rounds, so retirement win there. That's it for the all the reviewing. Moving on to the previewing, just going to fly through this. This one takes place tomorrow night at the BT Sports Studio in Stratford, London. Over here we get to see Nick Ball take on Jerome Campbell. Nick Ball 12-0, Campbell 6-0. Also we get to see, I'm not quite sure how to pronounce this guy's name. It's quite bad on my part there, but a guy I think called Kaimin Agyarko, 6-0. He takes on over 10 rounds Jez Smith, who's 11-1 with a draw. Jez Smith, I think, is the brother of Mitchell Smith. Jez Smith, he's been wanting a big opportunity for a long, long time. That's over 10 rounds there. And the main event, Lyndon Arthur, 16-0. This one's for the Commonwealth light heavyweight title against Dex Spellman, who's 16-3. That's a brilliant, brilliant fight. Spellman definitely the more experienced. Can he drag Arthur into deep water? That'd be interesting. Moving out also to Thailand. This one I think takes place, if I'm not mistaken, about 8:30 a.m. UK time. I think you can watch it on Matchroom's YouTube channel, if I'm not mistaken. It's probably going to be about 3:30 a.m. in Eastern time on Saturday morning. So yeah, quite a strange card. Anyway, the fight takes place in Thailand, like I say, at the Workpoint Studio. The fight is between Wisaksel Wangek, who is 47-5 with a draw, the guy that stopped Chocolatito Roman Gonzalez twice in back-to-back fights. He takes on Amnat Ruanrong, who's 20-3 over 10 rounds there. And then at the Matchroom Fight Camp, Eddie Hearn's first card since the pandemic came around. The fight's pretty much taking place in Eddie Hearn's back garden. We're going to talk about the undercard first. Dalton Smith, 5-0. He's in an 8-rounder against Nathan Bennett, who's 9-1. That's a great fight. Fabio Wardley, 8-0, takes on Simon Vallily for the vacant English heavyweight title. That's a brilliant fight over 10 rounds. James Tennyson, 26-3, takes on Gavin Guinn, who's 12-1. That's over 12 rounds for the vacant British lightweight title. Great fight between Jordan Gill, 24-1, in a 10-rounder against Reese the Bomber Bellotti, 14-3. And the main event, Sam Egginton, friend of the show, 28-6. He takes on Ted Cheeseman, 15-2 with a draw. That one's for the IBF International Super Welterweight title. Pretty much every fight on that bill is close to a 50-50, so I really like that card from top to bottom. Moving out now to the Mohegan Sun Casino in Connecticut, USA. Over here we get to see couple good fights on the bill, really. Going to start with the undercard. Friend of the show, I think he's called the Mighty Midget, Tremaine Williams, 19-0 in a 10-rounder against a guy called Reese Aleem, I think his name is, 16-0, so somebody's O must go there. All the best to Tremaine Williams, good guy. Also topping the bill for the vacant WBO World Super Bantamweight title. It's been, confirmed in the last few days, going to be for a vacant world title. Stephen Fulton, 18-0, takes on Angelo Leo, who's 19-0. So both men have a combined record there of 37-0. Someone's going to be taking a loss, though, on Saturday. That's August 1st, of course, on Showtime this Saturday. So brilliant fights there. I just want to quickly whiz through the news, if I have any. Carl Frampton takes on a fighter by the name of, and I have to check this because it's not a name I'd heard of previously. Carl Frampton takes on Varam Vardanyan, who's got a record of 21-1 with a draw. Look for his record. No standout names. It seems like a gimme kind of fight. Also on the same card, Michael Conlon takes on, what's his name? His name is Sofiane Takouch. He's a French fighter, 35-4 with a draw. We've seen him get stopped by Josh Warrington, I think in 1 or 2 rounds, I think last year for Warrington's world title. So got a bit of experience, I guess, and those fights both take place on the 15th of August. Archie Sharp was previously supposed to be topping the bill against Jeff Afori, and these two big names have come on the bill and pretty much pushed him aside, so I'm not quite sure how pleased he'll be. But, he seems to have took it, in his stride, if you like. But yeah, that's really all the news, just a tiny little bit of news this week. That's it, of course, for the review and preview segment. So we will be speaking to a world champion later on in the show. But before we get into that, it's now time for Eddie's segment, the Lockdown Knockdown. We're now at a pretty exciting stage, Eddie. Obviously, again, I must say, we recorded most of this last week, but the recording all went pear-shaped. And we're pretty much going to be repeating what we already spoke about. But where are we again? What are we going to be discussing this week, this episode, this edition of the Lockdown Knockdown?
I think we're past Rossi, right?
Yeah. We did Derek Rossi.
Okay. Did we do? We didn't talk about the Guinn fight. I think the Guinn fight was this one. I think we talked about the Guinn, and then we were going to go in. We went into the Calvin Brock.
Yes.
So we'll go with those two. And then we'll go from there.
Okay, let's get into it.
Okay. Well, for the Guinn fight, I mean, it was just right after I had beat Derek Rossi. We get the call, just like we often do, you know what I mean? And they were saying that we got to fight with Guinn. And I had just won the USBA title. It was going to be, I guess, a defense of that. So it was kind of nice to, me at that point, my young career, to be defending the title. And even previous before that, I found that I was 15th ranked in the IBF. So to get that opportunity and now to have the title puts me in the conversation for eventually, in a short period, a title shot. So it was kind of great. But so we went home. Like I said, we got the call. Okay, but Buddy was going to assist us a bit on camp. And, he had some guys he set down, some heavyweight sparring, some guys. But when we got there, a lot of the guys weren't, I guess they had left, and, it just wasn't what we thought initially. So what we were planning to do was, okay, well, he had, got in touch with a few people, a few of which I knew or knew of. And, but the issue was, it was some travel time. You know what I'm saying? Like, we were training every day, we were doing a normal thing, but the sparring we had to travel for. So one of the days I got in a car, and I must have been in the car for 3 hours. And granted, it's, air-conditioned ride, somewhat comfortable. But I do kind of remember getting out of the car feeling kind of stale. You know what I mean? And I'm not trying to make an excuse if I had a bad performance sparring, but it wasn't that. It was just when you're training for a fight and you're preparing for something serious like that, you want everything to be not necessarily perfect, but at least to be favorable for you. You know what I mean? You want to be able to feel pretty decent, at least going into some of these situations, because you don't want to go in there, even in sparring, you can get hurt. So, but I didn't feel my best. But, having the skill I had and being in good shape, I was still able to fare pretty well. But this particular time, the sparring partner, one of the main sparring partners at this point was, for that day, was Fres Oquendo, who's a pretty well-known guy, has one of the most awkward styles of any heavyweight. And it's just, it's a weird thing standing in front of me. He doesn't look really that special. He doesn't look like, anything to really write home about. I mean, he has some decent hand speed, but not like, you'll be like, oh my God, he's just a shockingly good fighter. But when you get in front of him, it's just not as easy as it looks. And he knows little things and little tricks and, things with his style, and it just made the fight real awkward and weird. So, well, not the fight, it was a sparring session, but so he was kind of difficult. The work with him was a little weird because, like I said, he was real awkward, real weird style. So, and then on top of that, like I said, a 3-hour ride, I just really didn't feel good. So it was actually at that point shaping up to be a pretty rough camp. You know what I mean? Because, like I said, we had to travel for sparring, and, it was going to be tough sparring anyway. So just knowing that you got to deal with that long-ass, excuse my French, but that long-ass ride, and then to go and have to do something tough like sparring and spar with people you might not even know. Because to be honest, we didn't really know exactly who we were going to spar. We just knew they had a couple tough guys in camp. So the work was pretty good considering. You know what I mean? I didn't do as good, obviously, as well as I could have done, but I did okay. But it was okay. So we ended up traveling back. Once again, a long ass ride. Got home not too late, but got home late, at a good enough time for me to get a good 8 hours of sleep. And then we had another opportunity for some sparring. I think it was down in Boca Raton, and with a guy by the name of Andre Purlette. We weren't actually going to work with him at first. We were supposed to work with Sultan Ibragimov, but for whatever reason, he couldn't make it, or he wasn't there. And then his cousin, I forget what the guy's name, but his last name he had the same name, but I cannot remember his first name. But we were going to spar with him as well, but neither one of those guys were available. So we ended up working with Andre for maybe like 8 to 10 rounds straight. And once again, we talking about Florida. We talking about going on Boca Raton, which it's just hot. Like the devil was just standing outside. It's just so hot. And then those gyms are like, they're like like garages. You know what I'm saying? With the doors open. And it's just steaming. And I mean, you to the point where you just feel the heat, like in your legs and your hands, your arms, everything. It's just burning me up. So the sparring was a little better this time, but it's still, with that long route, another 2.5 hour route or something like that, going down and dealing with that crap, and then having to spar a tough guy who could punch and, skilled guy. And it's like, oh, what the hell? But got through the sparring, dealt with it. And pretty much the entire camp was like that, traveling here, traveling there. And then the sparring we did get wasn't really that good. But the one good constant thing that I got, which made me really realize how important rest was. Like I was legitimately getting at least 8 hours of sleep every night. And it had, at first I didn't really know the effect it had because I really wasn't feeling that great in sparring. I mean, the training sessions were good, but I wasn't really feeling that great in sparring, but it was because of the travel. I didn't really start to feel how good I felt until I got to the fight, till we got out to Vegas, because I was going to fight. I was fighting Guinn in Vegas it was the day before, if I'm not mistaken, Joe. It was the day before De La Hoya Mayweather. I think that's right. It's right, right?
Yeah.
If I'm not. Okay, so it's the day before the Mayweather and De La Hoya fight. So I remember getting there and I'm feeling pretty decent. Like not nothing crazy, but I felt pretty good. And I'm kind of expecting not to feel that great, considering that the camp wasn't the greatest camp ever. Like I did well in sparring, I did okay here and there, but I just didn't feel that great performance-wise. And, sometimes as a top athlete or whatever, you want to make sure that you feel good before you get in and actually perform. You know what I'm saying? So I didn't really feel that 100%. So I wasn't sure. But then once we get there, we hitting the pads, we shaking out a little bit, went to the workout area like we always did, shook out light. And then I started to really feel I feel pretty damn good. And then I started to also realize my body kind of getting on the schedule. So at 11 o'clock, because I was pretty much going to bed at least the latest 11 o'clock every night when I was in camp. And every day my body woke me up, not me with an alarm or anything like that, but my body woke me up at a certain time. So I started to really feel that schedule. My body started really feeling good. I was like, damn, why do I kind of feel this good? It's kind of like surprising me a little bit. Like, I didn't expect to feel that good considering the performances in camp. You know what I mean? It wasn't like it was anything special. So, the day before the fight, the nerves come, they take you to do the little specials and they talk to you and ask you questions about the fight and the fighter. And then you take your still pictures and, the face-offs and all that crap with the prelim stuff, before you go to the fight for the fight night. And I'm kind of feeling good enough to make me feel a little weird. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm feeling a little bit too good. Like I wasn't expecting to feel this good considering how the camp went. And this is the day of the fight. So then I'm already starting to get nervous anyway. But then I'm starting to get nervous about that. Like, is there something going to happen? Like, it's ridiculous to be nervous about feeling good, but I wasn't used to feeling that good because, I've had so many fights in the past where I was fighting on fumes, because we worked so hard. And then I started to think, well, maybe I'm going to get tired because I didn't work hard enough in camp. Maybe we didn't do this, maybe we didn't do that. And it's like, damn, so what am I going to do? So I'm starting to worry about that. And then, of course, Steve, he was doing his makeshift pad work, but we went over what we were going to do in the fight and how we had planned to fight and how he throws punches and what he does because we kind of knew him from watching him. And like I said, me and Steve probably trained each other for most of these fights anyway, no disrespect to my dad or Rob, but that was what it was. So we went over generally our game plans together. So we were in, like I said, doing our light pad work. And coincidentally, funny enough, it actually played out that way in the fight. And everything we expected him to do, he did. But I felt so good, even with the nerves and all. I felt so good in the fight that I was taking it too easy. Not necessarily taking it easy like I wasn't doing what I was supposed to do, but taking it easy like, man, I'll let him throw punches all he wants and he ain't touching me and it ain't hurting me. It's not bothering me. I can do what I want here. Not realizing that the more he does and the more active he is, the closer the fight stays. Because, I mean, don't get me wrong, my punches are looking a lot better, looking a little, faster, sharper, harder, everything. But he is still coming back and, and giving me something back each time, even if it's not anything to write home about. And even if he's missing, it's still activity. So some of these rounds are close. And as I get further into the fight, my dad starts to really, get into me a little bit and telling me, hey, you want to start picking it up. This guy, you can't just keep sitting there and letting him throw punches at you. You got to take over the fight. And some of those things he said probably a little more aggressive than I just did. But the reality of it was I had to pick it up. So as the fight went on, I started to pick it up a little bit, landing more combinations, 3s and 4s, sometimes maybe five punch combinations, doing a couple different things. And, it was some impressive things I did, don't get me wrong, but I still allowed him, especially in the early part of the fight, to be in the fight. And out of the fight, realistically, I think I won probably 7 to maybe 8 of the 10 rounds. But the reality of it is because I could have shut him out. Shoot, I don't know if I could have stopped him. Maybe I wasn't punching him hard enough or I couldn't hurt him enough. But I definitely could have did more work in there. But once again, I was feeling so good. And sometimes that is not the greatest thing. If you feel so good, sometimes it makes you coast because you feel like you can do, you don't really need to do all this extra work when it just seems so easy. You feel like you're in control. You may be, sometimes it's fool's gold because you think you're winning because it's so easy and nothing's bothering you. But the people on the outside are watching, right? And they're judging it punch for punch. And some people actually count punches, which is ridiculous, but that's what they do. You understand what I'm saying? So then it makes it sometimes hard to judge. So even if you're landing the better punches, they may be scoring it for him. So regardless of how good you feel, anytime you fight, win at all costs. And what I mean by win at all costs, I mean if you can put your foot on the gas, if you can turn up the heat, if you can throw more punches or harder shots or whatever it is you can do, if you can be clean defensively and not let them touch you, do whatever it takes no matter what. Because if you keep sitting in there and letting the guy exchange with you, even just to make you feel macho, can come out on the short end of the stick. Maybe he's more popular. Maybe they want him to win. You know what I'm saying? So you gotta stay on the gas. You gotta win at all costs and don't play no games. And that's the problem that I had with a few of my fights, and this being the first one. Well, I mean, obviously, there's probably been some other issues I've had earlier in my career, but these ones are the ones that stood out because these fights were closer than they needed to be.
Yeah, and that win, obviously, over Dominick Guinn, was a brilliant win at the time. Another kind of step up the ladder. Guinn, obviously, even to this day, a very, very tough guy. Nowadays, got 13 losses, but never been stopped in any of those. Like I say, Adelaide Bird did have you pitching a shutout that night, and Dave Moretti and CJ Ross 97-93. So yeah, where do we go from there, Eddie? Is there a training camp, or are we straight into the boxing banker fight against Calvin Brock?
Yeah, we going to talk about the boxing banker, and we have a little history even before that fight. And real respectable guy. It's funny. We were actually supposed to fight.
Was he really a banker?
I think we were both 8. I think so. In fact, this is a little fast forward, but right before we were fighting, maybe that morning or something like that, I think we saw him in the lobby with the paper, looking at the stocks and all that crap. You know what I mean? Taking a look and checking up on his investments and all that. I'm telling you, I think he was a legitimate banker. I think so, man. You know what I mean? Obviously, he got out the sport right after we fought, so I don't think he needed it that much. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, we actually had history before that. We had not only had we sparred before, which was a little later, but we actually were trying to schedule a fight between us two earlier in our careers. But I think we both had 8 fights at the time. We were both 8-0, and we were looking, and I think my management team at the time was looking to sell me out. Not sell me out like sell me, but they were like looking to get somebody who would pay them a good deal of money to buy the contract. And if I was, if I was good enough, if they could sell me and get some money for me or whatever, because they just didn't think they could do anything with me, the guys that I was with early on. But the fight fell through. They ended up declining it. We were thinking about doing it, and they did it first because it just didn't look like a good matchup. Actually, now that I look back on it, it looked like a better matchup for me than it did for him. So they were smart to decline it. Then you fast forward a few years after that, we actually end up having an opportunity to spar because he was training with a guy in Ambridge, PA by the name of Tommy Keller, who was a really good trainer from the area. And he was training him, and I think we were obviously in Philly at the time. I mean, we were living in Philly at the time, but we were visiting back home. And I think they called us and asked, hey, will Eddie be able to come up and work with Calvin for this fight we had? I forget what he was fighting. I'm not sure. And, my dad, even if I wanted to turn something down, he wasn't turning nothing down. So we was definitely going to go up to spar with Calvin no matter what the situation was. Whether I was fighting him next, I could have been, man, if they called me for sparring and we were set to fight each other, he would have probably wanted to take the damn sparring. But that's just how my dad was. But anyway, so we planned on going up there. We went up there and spar with him. And, I'm not trying to, make myself out to be this killer. Like I beat everybody up in sparring that I ever sparred with. But I felt like I did in the Guinn fight. I felt super comfortable and super relaxed. I felt like it was always going my way. Not necessarily was 100% true all the time, but I just felt like I had the speed advantage. He wasn't like very good fighter. You know what I mean? Nothing really special, no special effects, nothing crazy. Pretty big puncher. He had a pretty good punch, but he wasn't really he was crafty, but he wasn't really slick or any way special with speed or anything like that. He was really good with timing, had a decent jab, really quality skills, but nothing to write home about. So when I get in there with him and I'm dazzling him or whatever with speed and combinations and moving around him and stuff like that, it just, a guy like him, he's just not used to that kind of thing, especially heavyweights in general just weren't used to that kind of thing. So sparring was always so weird for him, uncomfortable for him. You know what I'm saying? And that's really all you want your opponent to be, is a little uncomfortable. So we had worked a lot of rounds, and I figured we worked maybe, we were doing 8 to 10 rounds a day, and we sparred probably 4 times in that week and a half, 4 or 5 times. And I really felt comfortable most of those days. My dad was on my ass every day, wanting more from me. But Calvin actually at one point was talking about that, like, yo, man, calm down. Why are you trying to get the kid to turn it up so much? I feel like he did pretty damn good today. You know what I mean? Because my dad was trying to get me to push so much more. And he's like, damn, man, he's already on my ass. How much more do you want him to do? And he wanted me to kind of chill down and kind of settle a little bit. But the reality of it was, if you know my dad, he wasn't trying to take no seconds. So that was just how it was. But anyway, fast forward, and I think we did have a camp. Obviously, we had a camp for the Calvin Brock fight, but it was a weird time because we had, we were training in Schuler's gym. Actually, I wanted to mention too, Naazim Richardson just passed not too long ago, and God rest his soul, great trainer, one of the greatest, one of the best of our time. So it's kind of messed up, and kind of talking about Schuler's where we all trained at one point kind of made me remember him again. But anyway,
yeah, I thought you were going to probably say something about that towards the end, but now that you've brought it up now, just let our listeners know what's going on, Eddie. You're currently. Tell me. You're there with a few people. Who's there? What's going on? Obviously, surrounding brother Naazim's passing.
Yeah, well, I I didn't actually get a chance to make it to the actual ceremony and everything at the time because I was at a prior engagement. I couldn't get there, but the guys I'm with now they were all there, and of course, a lot of the fighters that he touched, that he worked with, I'm certain were there. My brother, Johnny, another good friend of mine, and Bashir, my trainer, another one of the greatest trainers out there right now, was all there. And they kind of let me know, what's going down, and they wanted me to come, obviously, but I couldn't make it. But yeah, it's just a sad thing when you see a guy like that, legend in the sport. And funny enough, he's the one who caught Antonio Margarito first with those loaded gloves. And he's always one of the smartest trainers that I've ever been around. We listened to him talk, and believe me, he hold court for a while, but you always wanted to listen because he always had so much good knowledge to give. You know what I'm saying? And it's just sad to see something like that. When, I don't know what the whole situation was and what what he was going through at the time, but from the past and not to be able to see him, and I haven't seen him in a good while, it's kind of messed up.
I'm guessing Bernard must have showed his face, no?
Oh yeah, no doubt about it.
Who else was down there earlier today, Eddie? Who else was down there, do you know?
I'm not sure. I gotta talk to the guys, and they're all here. I wish I could tell you, but I don't want to get them running, getting there running their mouth because they'd be all crazy. But I'm certain all of his guys were here. There's no doubt about it in my mind that I wouldn't be surprised if Shane and Bernard and all of those guys were up here, to be honest. But
Steve Cunningham.
Yeah, like I said, Steve Cunningham for sure. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Steve was there too because he's only about a couple 4 hours, so 4 to 5 hours away in Pittsburgh. So it wouldn't have been a tough drive. Plus my brother came down coming from the same place, so there shouldn't be no issue for him to get here.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's sad time in the boxing business. This is not a good time when you lose somebody like that. So much knowledge, so much. So like a name that you're going to remember in the sport for sure.
Yeah, well said, man.
Thank you, Joe. But anyway, we're going to go back to talking about the Schulers and the camp I had, which was kind of weird because it's funny. I was sparring Calvin, which we know. Well, I was fighting Calvin. I'm sorry, I was fighting Calvin, and Calvin is maybe 6'2" at most. So a little bit taller than me. Even in the pictures you can see he's a little bit taller than me. But for some reason, we had tall sparring. And I guess it doesn't really matter to a degree. It's important just to have good sparring. And I believe in that too. You know what I mean? No matter what the situation is. A lot of guys like to just get confidence and be the best guy in the gym all the time. And don't get me wrong, I always felt like I was, or at least, with the guys I was working with. But the reality of it is, man, if you're not getting tested in the gym, then how you going to be ready for anything or how you going to be ready to be tested in the ring? You know what I'm saying? So even camp to camp is important. So, man, we had Tony Thompson. I forget who else. I had Chaz Witherspoon was there. Then I don't know why or how this happened, but the whole Irish Olympic team came in town. I think it was Irish or the English or Irish. I can't remember for sure. I think it was the Irish team. And I think I ended up sparring David Price. Didn't even know who he was at the time. He was a kid. He was young. He was obviously real young, but still 6'8", big, tall guy. What the hell am I sparring a 6'8" guy when I'm fighting Calvin Brock, who's 6'2", but whatever. It's work. And then there were some other guys that were there. And I feel like the shortest guy was a 175-pounder when it was 6'4". So I just don't understand what they was trying to do. They was just growing tall guys over there. But anyway, they all were all pretty good. And the sparring, once again, for this fight was not the greatest. You know what I mean? Because it was a little bit obviously working sparring with these long, rangy guys was tough. And on top of that, having Tony Thompson, who's also another top-level guy that I'm running in with, also Chaz Witherspoon, who at the time was on his way up too, out of the Olympic program. And I think he was an Olympic alternate. And it's just like, man, it's tough work all the time. And I'm the smallest guy in there, 6'1", sparring all these giants. But you got to do what you got to do. And then also, not to forget Steve Cunningham, who's another 6'3.5", 6'4" guy that I'm in this room with, who's a cruiser. But all of these guys I'm running into and I'm dealing with, and I got to just, day in and day out work with them every. And my dad did not believe in necessarily taking breaks and rest. So we sparring sometimes four days in a row, maybe every day in a week, that was just how it was. We had certain sparring days, but maybe if he felt like I needed some more work or whatever, he was going to put them in there. And those guys were there for me. So they helped me. So as tough as the sparring was, and I had good days, don't get me wrong. I had my days where I ran them out, but for the most part, it was tough. I was always running there with somebody tough. So get through camp. Like I said, another hard camp. But I felt, reasonable, got reasonable sleep. Not like I did in the Guinn camp, but got reasonable amount of sleep because I think we were at home for this one. Yeah, we were at home, obviously. I was training the shooters. But anyway, so then we go away to the fight, which was a weird trip because it was going, for whatever reason, we're both East Coast fighters. And I still to this day don't understand why they did that. Maybe it was because it was cheap to get one of the one of those I can't even get one of those I guess the permits like for the casinos or something or whatever. It was a little bit easier or cheaper to get than I guess for like a regular venue or a big venue. And for a small fight card like we had, which wasn't really a big one, it was just me and Calvin was the main event, and it was on a showbox card. They really couldn't get any funding, so I guess they was like, well, what's the point in putting in a spot that's going to be expensive when we're not going to get the gate or the buys? You know what I mean? So I guess they just said, we're going to take this thing over to the west, to the northwest. Don't quite understand. I feel like we could have done it somewhere more local, but whatever. Guinn is a West Coast guy, and I guess they agreed to that. So we end up going way out there, and it was funny when we got out there too. I found out who his trainer was, and his trainer was none other than Pernell Sweet Pea Whitaker, and he's a big trash talker too. Because I was out there, and when you're in getting ready for a fight or whatever, and you're at the venue or at the area where the fight's going to be, you want to find a place that you can get some last-minute shakeouts and some last-minute workouts. And so we did that, right? But coincidentally, it's kind of weird because we only had really one place to train up in that area. It was in Seattle-Tacoma area. And it was just like a PAL gym that they had up there, it was really nice, big. It was a nice in general thing. They had computers for help kids with school and everything in there. It was real nice. They had basketball, which I love. They had the boxing section. They had a lot of stuff in there, man. It was really nice. But we both had to use it. So I guess for shits and giggles or whatever, we went over there to train, and I guess they knew that we were going to be there. So I guess just to mess with me or whatever, they wanted to come over and watch me shake out right before he got his workout in. So I'm over there, and I noticed that they're there. So I'm starting to I'm giving them my best moves, my sharpest combinations, the fastest punches, the feints, the speed, all of that stuff, right? All of the movement that he's going to be looking at, and hopefully, and freaking Sweet Pea over there killing me, talking about that's all he got. Oh man, this might be an easy night, Calvin. And you see that? He really think that's scaring or worrying, making somebody. He's going in and in and in, and I know he's just saying that to get a rise out of me. So I hear him, and I just start turning it up even more, doing more stuff. More feints, more quick combinations and spins and all of this crap. And I'm saying to myself, yeah, you talking all that shit. Wait till you see your boy in front of me on Friday, or I think it was Friday or Saturday. And they kept going until we left. But I know, because he knows boxing, and I know Calvin knew boxing, and they knew what they were in for that night. They just thought that their plan was going to be enough to kind of nullify what I brought to the table. But the reality of it is, the more he talked, the more I knew I had him. You know what I'm saying? Fast forward to the fight. The fight night, once again the nerves come, all these worries and all of this, and but I get, I remember the ring walk, and they don't really show ring walks on Showbox because it's not really, I guess, that important. I mean, they just want to have the fighters in the ring. But I remember the music that I came out to, it just felt perfect. That whole thing felt perfect. I even had I was nervous, but I was into it. You know what I mean? I loved being a part of this whole thing. And then, finding out that this is the opportunity, maybe I get a title shot soon after, or I'm going to be in the championship of this tournament next and all of these things. Then not to mention the amount of money I thought I heard I was getting was the biggest payday to date. I was like, wow, man, I'm really stepping into the big time. So I felt really good about it. And get into the fight. Once again, I start feeling a little too good. And, start playing to the crowd, making faces, making him miss and hitting him with little quick shots and stuff like that I knew he wasn't really capable of dealing with. And, as the fight go in, you get a little more relaxed, you get a little more comfortable, and it just becomes like, I'm a beat this dude walking away easy. It ain't gonna be nothing. But then as the fight goes on, and my dad's not gonna play, not gonna bullshit me at all. He's gonna tell me exactly what's happening. And he's feeling like I'm kind of messing around and I'm not doing enough. All that playing to the crowd, all that crap you doing, that ain't doing nothing but making them not want to give you the damn round. Go out there and punch and win the round. Probably said it obviously a lot more harsh than that, and probably cursed me out in the corner, but something like that. So the idea was I needed to pick it up. And as the fight wore on, I did, but I still remember throwing a lot of single shots. I could have definitely picked up the pace and do more combinations. There was a lot of single pot shots and counters, which were good, but it just didn't overwhelm him enough to like just give me a clear-cut victory, even though I felt like I deserved one. You know what I'm saying? And especially when these guys don't really like your style. Because even up to that point, I really just don't think they were in love with my style. The idea was they just wanted the two freshest faces to fight in the championship, which will be the next fight after I finish telling this. But the idea was they just wanted that. And they didn't really like my style. They didn't really like to watch, like I said, they didn't really like my style. So, and then the playing to the crowd and the things like that kind of sometimes gives the judges a sour taste in the mouth. And then once again, like I said, I dominated them. Like I felt like I dominated them and all, but I felt like I did it. And I felt like I didn't do it in the way I really should have. You know what I mean? I should have put more punches together. I should have looked to try to get him out of there because I felt like there were opportunities for that in that fight too. You know what I mean? I felt like he was wheeling a couple times and really ready to go, and felt like he was a little tired. But once again, I let that thing go to a judge's scorecard, and coincidentally, they had it split, which is the first time I've ever had to even hear that. Now I've heard majority before, but this is the first time that I've heard a split. You know what I mean? So now I'm thinking, oh, crap. Did I ruin my chances? But at the time, I'm not thinking that because I'm thinking I felt good. I felt like I was winning the fight. I controlled the entire fight. That he didn't do anything. I got to the point at one point in the fight where I almost dropped my hands and made a stupid mistake and let him catch me with a stupid shot. But that's how in control I felt. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, damn, how could they have a split decision? So I'm thinking, okay, well, here's the salt in the game. They gonna try to, they're gonna try to get me out of there. And they read it, and I end up winning, but by split decision. And I'm sitting there like, damn, like what did I do wrong in this fight? But then I go and look at the tapes, and even not too long ago, I look at the tape and I realize, like, damn, I did allow him to stay in the fight. And once again, like I said before, if you have an opportunity to take control, to dominate, to knock a guy out in 30 seconds, do it. Do not fucking sit around. Sorry again about the cursing, but do not sit back and allow yourself to mess around and have too much fun, because before you know it, that final bell ring, this dude goes the distance and gets a crazy bullcrap decision. Then what? Then what do you do your career? You know what I mean? So don't take anything for granted. Just because you might feel good and you might think like you're in front, you might be controlling the fight, all these things might be in your favor. But that doesn't mean that the scorecard or the decision is going to go your way. There's a couple fights that we're going to get to later on that you're going to find out totally find out about that through my eyes. You know what I mean? It's just not. There's nothing that is guaranteed, especially in a sport like this where they pick a winner, even if you feel like, and most of the world feels like you won.
Yeah, and like I say, another brilliant win there. And I want to get into that. I think it's real interesting that, the late, great Pernell Whitaker trained him for the fight. And obviously, some people don't know that, Pernell's close friends and family often called him Pete, right? So when he was an amateur, they would actually chant Sweet Pete. That was his real nickname, Sweet Pete. But a local newspaper at the time misheard it and, and thought they were saying Sweet Pea. And then that was it. That was where the nickname came from. It stuck. So that's where Sweet Pea came from. But
that's cool. I didn't even know that. That's cool. I like that.
But, as for the boxing banker Calvin Brock, that nickname came because he'd earned a bachelor's degree in business administration and finance from the University of North Carolina at Charlotte. So that's where that one came from. Wow. But Yeah, I mean, a good win. I know you feel like it should have been wider than what it was. It should have never been a split. But, Calvin Brock, a guy... Well, sorry, I'll come to you in just a second.
No.
Go on.
No, but do you think?
No, Calvin Brock obviously went into the fight with that record, 31-1. The one loss coming to Vladimir Klitschko for the IBF and IBO World Heavyweight titles. I think a year almost to the day previous. So, brilliant win. And of course, subsequently had to retire, due to the damage that he took in that fight from yourself. He needed an operation on his eye, and basically the operation went wrong. And to my knowledge, I think he's pretty blind in one eye. I read something that he can see daylight or something in that eye, but anyway, one of his eyes is messed up for good, and he was forced to retire from boxing after that. But what was you going to say, Eddie? Sorry.
Yeah, no. I was saying that it's sad to see that happen to him even then, and not necessarily saying he's the prime of his career at the time, but he still had obviously life left. Just losing to me was no big deal, he lost to Vladimir before it. He made it to the world title, so it's sad, but even with all that and all of the guys he faced, I looked at an interview and I couldn't believe it to myself when he said it. He said, I was the sharpest guy he ever fought. And I was like, damn, ever? Like, you had amateur fights. You were at the top level amateur. You were a top level fighter, like in the pros. And I'm the guy? Kind of surprised me. I always respected him for actually saying and telling the truth, if that he really believed that. Wow. You know what I mean? Even to this day, it still makes me say, damn, I can't believe that he said that. And that's nothing to sneeze at. Like I said, he had been in the ring with other great fighters before. You know what I'm saying? One of them being probably the greatest of our era. You know what I mean? Vladimir Klitschko. So that's a hell of a thing to hear. You know what I mean? And just in general, man, it gives you a great deal of confidence going forward, especially a person like me who wasn't really the most confident guy ever. So it was nice to hear. And shout out to him in general. Hope everything's good for him.
Yeah, I know you've never seen him since the fight, which is quite sad, really. But all the best to him. But yeah, you're right. Obviously he was an Olympian. He went to the 2000 Olympic Games. Just to get confirmation on that, it was a eye surgery that had gone wrong. I read here that the shots that you landed and stuff like that, he had a detached retina in his right eye.
Detached retina.
Yeah, and then a surgical mistake left him legally blind in that right eye. But anyways,
Jesus.
Yeah, all the best to him, man. But so that brings us up to where we at. We're at November 2007. Obviously, your next fight would take place in. Only about, what's that? About 10 weeks later, you're back against Povetkin.
Yeah.
But are we going to get into that this week, or are we going to come to that next time?
Yeah, we're going to come back to that next time, because that's
pretty big.
And it's a lesson. It's a huge lesson. Huge lesson in that fight. And just in general, man, and it's like I've always been one of those guys that really, really, really believed in training properly and being 100% ready. And we always did. And, my dad wasn't for the bull crap. But this is why we really need to talk about this somewhat at length. And this is an important milestone in my career. And actually, it was a pretty good lesson to help me get over the hump the next time out.
Yeah, man. So I'm excited to get into that. That's a big, big fight there. Obviously, that Calvin Brock win would be the end of the win streak. It wouldn't go further than that. But yeah, just to let people know, again, there was this format. You didn't really mention this, but there was this kind of 4-man tournament, Eddie, obviously, between you and Brock. Brock obviously had a world title fight in the past, and Chris Bird and Alexander Povetkin. Povetkin at the time obviously undefeated. Chris Bird at that point, he'd been world champion at that point, of course, hadn't he?
Oh yeah. He had won. He was. It was like they were looking at him as
the old
coming to the end.
Yeah,
kind of thing, coming toward the end. But he still was kind of. And they were talking about, do you feel like you got shafted by getting Calvin Brock over getting Chris Bird? Because they felt like Calvin Brock had more left than Chris Bird at the time. And I'm like, look, in my mind, I'm saying I might have made it off easier because I have history with Calvin, so I kind of know him a little bit. So at least I know what to prepare for. With Chris Bird being a southpaw and slick as he was, even older, even maybe not being a step as fast, being as quick, or being as sharp, that still might have been a tougher fight. I don't know. It all depends. It never happened,
Yeah. But no, like I say, obviously you beat Brock, Povetkin beats Chris Bird, and then that sets up that Povetkin fight, which we'll get into next time. I'm sure there's going to be a lot to speak about there. So that wraps up this episode of this edition of the Lockdown Knockdown. Like I say, we did the news, we did the review and the preview part just before we bring in our sole interview this week, our sole guest of this week's podcast. Eddie, if you just want to sign out with any closing words before we let you go, my friend, and I bring in this sole guest.
No, man, just thanks for having me on again, Joe. This is a great opportunity for me to tell this crazy story that I have, and maybe it's the start of something good. And hopefully, I still have another chapter left, but we'll see. But it was just great talking to everybody. Hopefully, like I said, we can do this again. Hopefully, maybe next week, and then get into the more meaty part of this whole thing, this whole crazy life and career that I've had so far.
Yeah, looking forward to it, my friend. And like I say, once more, I just want to say, rest in peace, of course, to brother Naazim. And please, Eddie, just say hello to everyone on my behalf, everyone that you're with. Great people, of course, yeah?
Not a problem, man. I got you.
Okay, well, that brings all the talking to an end. It's now time to welcome our sole guest on this week's podcast, the former IBF Bantamweight World Champion, Mr. Paul Butler. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the former IBF Bantamweight World Champion. It is, of course, Mr. Paul Butler. Paul, welcome to the show, my man.
Thanks for having me, mate.
Absolutely my pleasure, Paul. Thank you for giving me some time. So, Paul, I want to start with just revisiting a couple of your previous fights. I'd like to start with, your world title shot back in 2014, June 7th in Newcastle. You pretty much moved up in weight to fight Stuart Hall. You were clearly a super flyweight back then. Stuart Hall was a big bantamweight at that. So to move up and beat him was a massive statement. I remember it like it was yesterday. What do you recall of that huge night for yourself, though?
Yeah, it was a brilliant night. I'd obviously heard about Stuart Hall getting the fight against Malinga, and then I remember getting invited down to actually watch the fight. And I remember walking into the arena, and I walked in with Francis Warren, and he said, "If Stuart Hall wins this fight, would you be keen in taking him on?" And I just looked at him and I said, "Of course I would, yeah." And I'd previously sparred with Stuart. We'd done loads of rounds together. I think I sparred him for one of his Jamie McDonnell fights. I sparred him for the Ashley Sexton fight. So we were very, very familiar with each other. So I was more than confident in taking the fight. And I said to him straight away, I said, "Of course I would, yeah." I watched the fight, and I remember after 2 or 3 rounds, I was sat next to Francis, and he said, "What do you think?" I said, "I'd box the ears off the pair of them, whoever wins." And then I thought I'd lost the fight then, because he ended up boxing Martin Ward. Yeah. And I got invited to that one as well. And I'd obviously heard that them two had sparred quite a lot before, and I'd heard that Martin was getting the better of the spars previous to the fight. So I was a bit worried going down, because I knew Martin from an amateur, and I knew how talented he was. But then obviously it got stopped with an head clash within 4 rounds, and we were next in line then, so I was made up. But like touching on the question, it was an unbelievable night of what I remember of it. The build up to it was brilliant as well, and we didn't see eye to eye much before the fight. We sort of fell out, considering we got on pretty well, in our sparring camps.
And that's surely got to be your happiest night in a boxing ring, surely.
Yeah, it was brilliant. Yeah, that British title touches close as well because of the occasion, how many tickets had sold. and the way it ended, the British title. I was sparring partners with John Donnelly as well, and there was obviously tweets going out of the morning of the fight by his trainer, Derry Matthews, and just tweets going out saying, it's mad to think we're going to have a British champion in the gym tomorrow. And I knew deep down that I'd stop him because I'd sparred him plenty before. And I knew I thought in my own head, once it starts getting to the middle rounds, I'll start wrapping him around the body and I'll slow him down and I'll stop him. That's what I thought in my own head. I obviously didn't think we're 69 seconds and it'd be over, but yeah, that was a brilliant night as well. But yeah, the world title tops it. Yeah,
2 brilliant wins there, and obviously, the aim after that win over Stuart Hall was to move back down in weight, which you did. You boxed Zolani, Tete. I'm going to hold my hands up and say I didn't really know tons about Tete before that fight, so I expected you to win it, but it didn't go to plan. What do you remember about that one? But he's huge, Tete. Yeah,
he was massive. We pretty much knew nothing about him ourselves. I had a video of him from like 4.5 years before. He was boxing for his flyweight world title 3 days before I made my debut. So he was at world level when I was making my debut at flyweight. So that was really the only footage we had of him, and he quit in that fight. He goes over with a jab, and that's all I kept saying to him in the build-up. You'll quit, I'll get to you, and you'll quit. And obviously we hadn't seen how much he'd improved and how well he travelled. And because he travelled really well, he was going over to Japan and he was winning final eliminators over there, and then he travelled to win the title. So I hadn't seen anything of him for like years. And then I remember getting in the first round, and the very first shot he threw, I thought, God, he's good, he hits hard as well. He threw a jab to the body and it landed, and I thought, he hits hard then. I thought, is that what world level power's like? Because I'd obviously sparred Stuart Hall, and he didn't have the best of power, but he had the engine to go with it, do you know what I mean? Stewie, but Tete had just frightening power. Nothing really hurt me throughout the fight, but he didn't really land it at great will. It was mainly jabs where I couldn't really get past. The jab and the right hook, which was keeping me at bay, and I couldn't get in, and I was getting more frustrated. And yeah, the shot that finished it, you've got to take your hat off to him and say, brilliant shot, timed it lovely. He tried it a couple of times before and it whistled past, and he pulls the jab out, blinds me, and he just lifts it up. Nice shot.
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, after that, though, obviously, it's normal to kind of have a few keep busies after that, perhaps some more confidence boosters. But there was like a 2-year period where I think you had 7 fights in that time. They were all kind of like treading water type fights. At that stage, was that when you kind of started having, I want to say, promotional issues at the time?
Yeah, like I've always said, like the American, I think the Americans do it right. Like they'll lose and they'll get back into another big fight. Do you know what I mean? The Brits seem to like lose and we just go and box next to nobody. Do you know what I mean? And I weren't a fan of that. I was like, just get me a fight, or like the fight what I had after Tete, get me something like that, and then move me into an eliminator or something. Do you know what I mean? Like I've won a world title, I've boxed for a world title, I've been beat by Zolani, Tete, arguably the best super flyweight out there at the time. Just get me an eliminator of some sort, but it didn't happen like that yet. And then I was struggling to even get fights. Do you know what I mean? Like I was constantly on the phone. Can I fight? I was never ever injured under Frank. I'd never pull out of a fight. Wherever it was offered, I'd go. I'd fight. And then he got BT, and I thought, yes, finally. Do you know what I mean? Like instead of saying to all my mates, "Oh, you have to pay for Box Nation for the month," and they were like, "Oh, Box Nation, I'll just go to the pub and watch it." But then the pubs would have to pay for it. So when he got BT, I thought, brilliant, this is the platform that I need. And then I remember, I think Dubois was making his debut that day. It was Liam Williams versus Liam Smith in an eliminator for the WBO title, and Terry Flanagan versus Petrov, was it, I think? It was on that bill, and I didn't even make the BT. And I thought, wow, for all the years Frank struggled, I won in British, Commonwealth, all the Intercontinental titles you could think of, and a world title while he was struggling. Because all he used to say to me was, Paul, you've got to win this. You know, and I remember before the British title, Frankie Gavin won it the week before against Junior Witter. And then I won it the week later. I think we were the only two British title champions that Frank had. And then it goes on to win a world title. And I still am, I think. Me and Joshua are still the fastest Englishmen ever to win world titles. And I didn't even make the BT show. I got stuck on the Box Nation before the BT started. And I was gutted by that. I just thought, wow, I've gone right down the pecking order here. Nicola Adams and Dubois made the BT over me, and I thought, wow, that's not right, that. And then I had like 3 months left on my contract, and I asked Frank, I just said, would you release me? Would you give me my contract back? And he did. Fair dues to Frank. We've never had any crosswords. He done well for me in my career. Maybe looking back, maybe I should have just bided my time and just waited and got me shot under Frank. But you live and learn sometimes, I think. No,
well said, and yeah, you're right in what you're saying. Really, I agree with you. You know, it was one loss to a guy like Tete, who is just, you know, in my head, I call him Mr. Hot and Cold, because whichever one he turns up, you know, you just never know. But you know, after this period that we mentioned, you know, you got the rematch against Stuart Hall after that, another good win, of course. Then you made easy work of Jefferson Vargas before you end up on the Hay Bellew 2 undercard. So, of course, you're on TV this time against Emmanuel Rodriguez. And, you know, you tried your best that night. Rodriguez was really good that night. You know, you showed your toughness, and that performance really by Rodriguez turned me into a huge believer of his. To this day, he's one of the best in the division. You probably don't look back at the fight with the happiest of memories, but just tell us about that one, Paul.
No, not at all, to be honest. We'd heard about it around about Christmas. We'd accepted it around about Christmas time, and then it all just went flat. We had nothing, and I thought, right, this fight isn't happening, and Eddie weren't coming up with us with any offers, nothing. And then all of a sudden, I weren't training properly. I was in the gym taking over, but obviously eating what I wanted, doing what I wanted, out with the lads, etc. And then I got it sprung on me. It's either this fight on the Bellew card against David A in the return, or nothing, because the financial situation, we couldn't put on any other show around that. It wouldn't fit, do you know what I mean, for mine and Rodriguez's purse. Financially it wouldn't work, so I had 4 weeks or nothing, or Rodriguez had boxed the next one in line if we didn't take it. And I was like, 4 weeks? I was like at 10 stone, so I had to get to 86, and I struggled like mad. Basically I was just trying to lose weight. So with 4 weeks' notice, I was fighting a losing battle, but I always had that carrot hanging over me. If you win this, you're in the World Boxing Super Series. And I'd obviously seen what Callum had done in the World Boxing Super Series, money-wise and platform-wise, that I couldn't turn it down. I'd be absolutely stupid to turn it down. So I had to go in there and did my best. I'd watched enough of him. And looking back now, I'm not saying I'd beat him, but I'd love a 10-week camp, and I'd love to step in there. All I've shown with him that night is just how tough I am, and I'm never going to give up. Joe said to me after 9 rounds, he said, that's it. He said, I'm pulling you out now. I said, no, you're not. There's no chance you're pulling me out. I've got all my fans here. They've travelled down from Ellesmere-Port to London. There's no way. I said, Joe, I'm all right. I said, I swear I'm all right. He said, pull your nose all over your face. I said, I'm not bothered. I'm going out there and fighting. He said, all right. He said, I'll see what you like this round. And I went out and I tried hard in that round, so he couldn't really pull me out the next round.
Yeah, like I say, you showed so much toughness that night as well, and you know he was just he was really good. Again, 6 months later, you beat Yon Boyo. That was a good win, of course. Since then, you've picked up another 4 wins, all against guys who, are kind of a level below yourself. What is the plan, Paul, going forward? I know a couple of those fights, by the way, have been on Joe's own show, so you've kind of done each other a favour there. It's not really, where you belong, so to speak. But, what's the plan going ahead?
Well, I was number 3 with the IBF, and Greer got beat during this lockdown on one of the
top ranked shows.
Yeah, he got beat. So I don't know whether I haven't looked at the rankings, to be honest with you. I don't know whether I pushed into 2 or the kid that beat him's pushed into 2. I haven't got a clue. But I should imagine. Well, I've just signed a contract to box for a title. I'm not going to say which title or where or anything like that, because it's still going to get made and I don't want to spoil it. So I've just signed to box for a title, which would have pushed me to pretty much number 1 or number 2 with the IBF anyway, even if Greer would have won, do you know what I mean? So hopefully once crowds are back on and whatnot, then that fight will still go. Well, it will go ahead. We've had the email to say it is still going ahead, just when everything's back up and running. So that's the plan going forward, and I'm dying to get out there. It's frustrating as for every boxer, I should imagine, it's actually not getting out and active. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. And, you mentioned there, obviously, you got to be tight-lipped about it and all that until the announcement's official. But, you mentioned about boxing for a title. Would it be wise to have a fight in the meantime just to, to not be too rusty going in, or not at all? You're going to just go straight in?
No, I'm not one of them, I haven't sparred since before the lockdown. If I was to go in and spar tomorrow, I'm one of them that's just not rusty, do you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter how long I'm out the ring, I won't be rusty. Just give me a good training camp, some good sparring, and I'm ready to go, mate. I don't believe in none of all that. I was ring rusty there. You could tell, and get in. If your training camp's good enough, your sparring's good enough, there should be no ring rust there.
Okay. And this, because I know, again, a couple of your fights, obviously you haven't had to make weight. There hasn't been a title on the line. Which weight we at going forward here?
Bantamweight. I'm sticking to bantamweight, yeah.
Okay, nice one. And I want to ask you, Paul, as well, obviously during this lockdown, you're one of the lucky ones that doesn't get rusty, you say. What have you been up to?
Yeah, I've just been taking over. Obviously, we've been back in Joe's.
You had
done bits in Joe's. I've done bits in my own gym. Well, not my own gym, my amateur gym. I'm actually coaching our amateur gym as well, so I can train in there every day. And yeah, so I'm still active. I'm still training. I'm still ticking over, and I've been doing bits in Joe's as well.
Nice, brilliant. Because I see the video that Joe had the people come in with all the sprays and the hazmat suits and all that. It looked really good.
Yeah, we go in every day, and Joe checks our temperature, gives us our hand sanitizer. We going in 2s, so yeah, it's all very strict and done properly. There's no corners cut, and yeah, it's like Joe's mum's getting on, and Joe's looking after her, so Joe wouldn't cut no corners, to please anyone, because he's obviously caring for his mum, and there's obviously a lot of older people around us all, so we've all got most of us have all got mums, dads, you know what I mean, nans, granddads that are all quite vulnerable to it, so yeah, Joe wouldn't cut any corners.
Oh, excellent, my friend, excellent. One of my questions was going to be, if you had any idea when you're next out. Obviously, I didn't know that you were going to be getting a title shot next. So, are you of any clue at the minute when we're likely to hear anything?
No, but I did hear the other day. I don't know where I heard it. Apparently, the trialling crowds soon, aren't they? So I think it's October. The trialling crowds.
So.
Or end of July, or I heard something anyway that they're going to be trialling crowds soon. So hopefully very soon. Let's just hope this second spike, what they keep saying, is coming along. I'm not a great believer in all this, in this COVID, to be honest with you. I think they're having us off, but yeah. Let's hope that the government don't come out with a second spike.
Hopefully not. And I want to drop this big juicy question here as well here,
Yeah.
Paul. This is I'm really interested, quite excited to see what you say about this one. After beating Stuart Hall for the title at bantamweight, obviously in the first fight, if you could go back in time, would you have preferred to keep the title and attempt to defend it at bantam rather than move back down?
Biggest mistake in my life, mate.
Yeah.
Biggest mistake in my life. I had the title. I worked hard to win that title. Why give it up, man? Why give it up? Should have kept hold of it. Should have built myself up into a bantamweight then when I could. And tried to move forward. I know Caballero would have been a tough operator. He was very good. He was a big bantamweight himself, but so was Stuart Hall. He was a big bantamweight. Caballero was bigger puncher, better boxing ability wise. But yeah, just I'd have loved that chance. You know what I mean? But I was advised at the time, and I thought it'd be a good idea. And obviously, with us not knowing anything about Tete, that's why we went back down to try and create history. I think I'd have been the first man in 102 years or something to do it. But yeah, biggest regret of all is not defending. I've never heard the announcer say, and in the blue corner, IBF Bantamweight Champion of the World, Paul Butler. Do you know what I mean? I never heard them words. I never went out as a champion. I just give it up. And funnily enough, I didn't know I'd give it up. I was at a festival in Croatia, and I got a phone call off someone doing an interview, and they say, Paul, now you've given up your bantamweight title, what's the plans now? And I was like, I've given it up. I didn't know.
Wow.
I didn't even know that Frank and that had given it up on me. I knew eventually I was giving up, but I didn't know they'd actually give up the title at that time. I hadn't had the phone call or nothing to say, well, we're going to relinquish the title today and we're going to move forward with this Tete fight.
Wow, that's incredible.
So that's how it came about. I was on holiday, yeah.
No, but I mean, look, you're in the history books anyway for what you did at bantamweight to move up in weight to a weight where it wasn't your best weight at the time at all. You know, you moved up, you beat a much bigger guy, and you know you're in the history books for that. And like I say, throughout your career thus far, you haven't really taken tons and tons of punishment. Your days aren't over just yet. You can still do big things, Paul. I believe that. I'm not just saying it because you're on the phone.
100%.
And
no, I feel fresher than ever. To be honest with you, I feel like constantly in the gym. I'm like, ask anyone from our gym, and everything I do, it's like I've got to be first at everything. If we're doing a run, I've got to be first. I've got to set all the times of everything I do. I've got to be the best at it. Do you know what I mean? And I still feel fresh as they come in the gym. I still feel like the best still to come. I think under Joe, I feel like I don't waste nothing. It's all very, very structured, and everything's done right. As in, beforehand, it was all such a rush. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was just get to where I've got to be, and maybe I got to the world title sooner than I should have. Maybe I wasn't ready at that actual time. Maybe 20 fights, something like that. But the chance was there. You can't. It's like if it's a world title, you never turn down a world title shot.
Yeah.
And we took it with both hands and we won it.
Yeah, for sure. But no, you know, like I say, this lockdown as well, this pandemic is in my opinion is good for the mental side of things, which you need in boxing as well. You know, that's just my opinion. So
100%.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, no, I agree.
I'm excited to see you come back when it will be announced, Paul. And yeah, just you mentioned Randy Caballero. We had him on a few weeks ago. I tracked him down. He's now the proud owner of a barber shop, believe it or not. So he's.
Is he?
Yeah, he's got a barber shop which is doing pretty well, and he's talking about possibly making a comeback, so we shall see about that. All right, and Paul, just before we let you go, my friend, if you've got any closing words just to the listeners, anything you want to say, anything at all, you can thank sponsors, you can send a shout out to anyone, completely say whatever you want just before we let you go.
No, just thanks to my sponsors that have always stuck by me, Exago and Ringside, and everyone that's always played a part in my career so far, and there's much more to come.
Excellent. Listen, Paul, I just want to say it's been a real pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much for your time this week. I wish you all the best for the future. We'll be looking out for the announcement. And yeah, thanks for coming on. Speak soon.
Cheers, mate. Thanks, mate.
Okay, and this wraps up episode 250 of the BoxHard Podcast. I've been your host, Joey Coastman. The former heavyweight world title challenger, Mr. Eddie Chambers, has been with me for the duration of the show, so thank you to him once again with his Lockdown Knockdown segment. A massive thank you, of course, to our sole guest on this week's podcast, the former IBF Bantamweight world champion, Paul Butler. The biggest thanks of all, though, goes out to you, the listeners. One piece of news is that Stephen Fulton has tested positive for coronavirus, so his fight that I mentioned earlier on in the podcast is off. Instead, his opponent Angelo Leo will now be boxing the guy that was supposed to be in the chief support fight, Tremaine Williams. Again, it's going to be for the vacant world title. Tremaine Williams was supposed to be, obviously, like I say, the chief support. He was supposed to be boxing a guy called Reece Aleem. Reece Aleem will now be boxing a late replacement in the shape of Marcus Bates, who's 11-1, and his sole loss came to Reece Aleem back in April of 2018, so that's a rematch. I feel a little bit sorry for Leo, quite unlucky for Angelo Leo, because on fight week he finds out there's a late replacement and it's going to be a southpaw, so I'm sure he wasn't ready for that. We shall see. I wish Tremaine Williams all the best. He's a friend of the show. Just a reminder again, that one takes place on Saturday evening at the Mohegan Sun Casino in Connecticut. But that's about everything from myself. Thanks once again for listening. Enjoy your weekends, people, and we shall see you all again next week.